être si noir que mes deux petits yeux n'arrivent pas à croire qu'ils sont heureux. Dis, est-ce que le jour il reviendra demain comme toujours? Je n'ai jamais peur, même seul dans mes draps. J'ai pas mal au cœur, j'ai juste un peu froid. Dis, est-ce que le jour il reviendra demain comme toujours? La rentrée des classes arrivera demain. Après l'école qui passe, les vacances reviennent. Est-ce que le jour il reviendra demain comme toujours?
Welcome to the interpretations of Juan Luna's Parisian life. This webinar is presented to you by the Arts and Culture Committee. Before we start, may I call on our MC for today's webinar, Miss Maret Bautista.
Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. On behalf of Phoenix's Arts and Culture Committee, a warm welcome to everyone joining in via Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube to watch our webinar entitled Interpretations of Juan Luna's Parisian Life. I am Maret Bautista, your host for today's event. When I first learned about the topic for today, I immediately penciled it in my calendar. The painting and the lady subject have always intrigued me. And various stories, actually more like rumors, that have been circulating only added to the mystery. I'm sure our esteemed guest speaker, who is an expert on the subject, will help us get to know more about the artist and unravel the mystery behind his obra maestra. To set the tone for today's talk, we present a multi-awarded artist, Miss Julia Serrad, who will serenade us with one of the most loved French songs of all time. You guessed it, La Vie en Rose. The Philippine national anthem will follow right after.
Des yeux que font baisser le mien, un rire qui se perd sous sa bouche. Voilà les portes sans retouche de l'homme auquel j'appartiens. Qu'on me bras dans ses bras, que ma parle tout bas, je vois la vie en rose. Il me dit des mots d'amour, des mots de tous les jours, et ça me fait quelque chose. When you press me to your heart, I'm in a world apart, a world where roses bloom. And when you speak, angels sing from above. Everyday words seem to turn into love songs. Et dès que je l'aperçois, alors je sens en moi mon cœur qui bat. came to sing from above. Every day would seem to turn into love songs. Alors je sens en moi la vie.
Thank you very much, Julia. That was a great performance. I felt like I was in a cafe in the City of Lights while listening to her amazing voice. You know, Julia Serrad is the most sought after artist of the Love Project. Love stands for Live on Request Virtual Entertainment. Okay, to formally welcome us, may I now call on our lovely and hardworking Arts and Culture Committee Chairperson, Attorney Maria Alicia Lia San Juan.
Good afternoon to everyone, dear fellow Phoenix members and special guests. It's my pleasure to welcome all of you to the third webinar of the Arts and Culture Committee for this year, Interpretations of Juan Luna's impressionist masterpiece, Parisian Life. We are very fortunate to have with us this afternoon Dr. Eric Zerudo to talk about this very interesting topic. I actually first heard the longer version of this lecture a couple of years ago at the GSIS Museum, where his painting was originally housed after it was acquired by the GSIS at an auction in 2002. When I was invited by Mr. Domingo Go, our liaison director, to attend a 3-hour lecture about the Parisian life, I had my reservations. I could not believe that anyone could fill up an entire 3 hours talking about just one painting. I was half expecting to be very bored and had a ready excuse in case I found myself wanting to leave the talk early. But to my surprise, every minute of Dr. Zerudo's 3-hour talk was filled with fascinating information and stories about Juan Luna's life, his involvement in the propaganda movement, and of course, the painting itself. The 3 hours flew by very quickly, and at the end of it, I found myself actually wanting to hear more from Dr. Zerudo. So today, I'm very happy that the Arts and Culture Committee is able to present to you this very interesting talk about the Parisian life and Juan Luna, although in a more condensed version, and to have Dr. Zerudo here to enthrall and delight us with the many interpretations of this painting and the fascinating stories behind the painting and the artist. So I hope you will all enjoy this webinar, and thank you for joining us. We look forward to your active participation at the Q&A afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Leah. At this point, I would like to call on our highly regarded Arts and Culture Committee Liaison Director, Mr. Domingo Go, to introduce our guest speaker.
Thank you, Maret. Colleagues in Phoenix, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We all know that art encompasses a large variety of works, from paintings to sculptures, architecture to design, and in our time, digital art. Being subjective in nature, different art forms appeal to different people. In appreciating art, one inevitably takes a deeper look into the setting and historical implications, as well as background of the piece, a study of its origins. In so doing, one sees artists as reflecting the problems that they face and the issues of the society in which they work. By putting ourselves in the mind of the artist, we can better study how differently society functioned then compared to the present, and perhaps even empathize and relate to the problems they faced on a personal level, evoking feelings of joy, sadness, anger, and even pain. This afternoon, we are fortunate to have with us a speaker who will bring us through such an experience with Juan Luna's Parisian life. Our speaker was the director of the GSIS Museum of Art when the GSIS, or the Government Service Insurance System, acquired the Parisian life painting in 2002 at an auction in Hong Kong. He was likewise a former director of the Metropolitan Museum of Manila and a former UNESCO Commissioner for the World Heritage Convention, aside from having served as an international evaluation expert for World Heritage and Sites of Memory in recent conflicts. Currently, he is the director of the Graduate School Center for Conservation of Cultural Property and the Environment in the Tropics of the University of Santo Tomas. He is the Philippine representative of ICOMOS Prerico, or the International Council on Monuments and Sites, Places of Religion and Ritual Committee, and the national coordinator of the Episcopal Commission for the Cultural Heritage of the Church of the Catholic Bishops' Conference of the Philippines, as well as the program coordinator of the Cultural Heritage Studies Program of the University of Santo Tomas. He is likewise a member of the faculty of the Philippine Cultural Education Program of the National Commission for Culture and the Arts, and a heritage consultant to various government departments and agencies. Aside from having contributed to the formulation of the Asian Competency Framework for Heritage Professionals by the UNESCO in Bangkok, he initiated in 2001 the cultural mapping movement in the country. And he headed in 2015 the World Bank project on the vulnerability assessment of built heritage after the 2013 Bohol earthquake. His studies have focused on heritage theories, heritage policies and conventions, and heritage-driven development. A magna cum laude economics graduate of the De La Salle University, our speaker also holds a research certificate in museum management from the prestigious Todai, or Tokyo University in Japan, as a Mombuka Gakusho scholar. Also a Master of Cultural Heritage and Museum Studies degree from the Deakin University in Australia, and a PhD in Cultural Heritage Development from the University of Santo Tomas. He has likewise completed a specialist course in Architectural Heritage Conservation at Lund University in Sweden. It is therefore my honor and privilege this afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, to now turn over the floor to our distinguished speaker, my friend and fellow Japan alumnus, Dr. Eric Babar Zerudo. Dr. Zerudo, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Domingo, and to all the officers and members of Phoenix. This is quite unusual because I'll be speaking to many of these management executives, financial executives, which very often I would be more, I think, in the territory of my comfort zone would really be the people in the culture, history, arts, and heritage. So this is most welcoming to me. No, so I think this afternoon, what I would really advise for all of you to do, get your cups of coffee. Then I'll try to walk you through a very nice story of this painting. I have to be very honest with you because it's been a while since I have given this lecture. I had the privilege of working with this painting, working with Juan Luna siguro. That was way back 2002, so it will almost be 20 years, no? And I think my former students or participants in my previous lectures, there some of them are here, and I think they've been bitten by the bug, no? They got addicted by the message of Juan Luna. Nevertheless, allow me to share my screen to all of you so we can start the lecture. Maybe later I can share with you some surprises so that this will be not only a one-way lecture, but this will be more of like a mobile museum with actual objects that I can share with you. So allow me to share my screen. Uh, okay, so this is the image of the controversial painting. This is Parisian Life by Juan Luna y Novicio. Now, this is the painting that was bought by GSIS for 46 million pesos. This was way back in 2002. This was bought in an auction house in Christie's. The context of this painting was such that it became very controversial. First, because the context was the government's main flagship project focused primarily on poverty alleviation. The painting left the country and it was moved, no, to two other sites until it was auctioned off in Hong Kong, no, in November of 2002. Now, when the price catapulted to 46 million pesos, then everything went haywire. Everybody had something to say about the painting, whether it was good or it was bad. It just got the banner headline of the major dailies of the Philippines, I think, for the next 6 months. So when we were trying to look at this painting and we're trying to position the painting in the Museum of the GSIS, we were even toying with the idea of ano kaya ang magandang title ng ating exhibit? Total nandito na siya. So there was the title History, Destiny, Controversy. No? History, because every time you look at this painting, wow, look at the image. You can see on the corner, there are three personages who look very familiar to all of us. No? And it looks like this was an episode of their Paris sojourn. So dito po natin makikita maybe the lifeways of the Filipinos when they were abroad, particularly at that point in time. It is also destiny, because when I run you through this whole lecture, remember that later you'll notice it looks like we were just going through the motions, but it was really the painting that was trying to move itself back to the Philippines. No? So I will try to provide you with different situations, and I will try to be as detailed as possible so you'll be able to imagine exactly the context of how we were able to bring back the painting at the time in 2002. It's also controversy, no? Because controversy by the fact that it was bought to such an outrageous amount at that time. 46 million at this time is not really that big, but at the time that was a very big amount, and many government employees and GSIS contributors really questioned the acquisition of GSIS with regards to this painting. Now, I'm sure many of you will have questions, you will raise issues, you will raise insights related to this painting, but allow me to share to you this story that the GSIS went through so that maybe, just maybe, we will have a better appreciation of our arts, heritage, culture, and history, And I think we will have a better attitude towards our ancestors and towards what has bequeathed to us by history. This is Juan Luna's Parisian Life. And whenever you hear this title, Parisian Life, don't think that it's the only one. Prior to this title, there had been quite a number of titles with regards to this painting. So this is the image. And here you will see that there are four other titles related to Parisian life. The first title, of course, The Maid. This was called out from the Philippine Encyclopedia. Then there was another title that was forwarded to us by then uh, very well respected art critic and professor, Dr. Emmanuel Torres. He was able to find in his research this title, Yun Coquette. Another one was, of course, from the family. And this was carried on in the publication of one of the most authoritative books of Juan Luna, the Filipino as painter. And finally, we have the title Parisian Life. Now let's work on this one by one so that you will have a better appreciation how this built up and how some of the ascriptions to our artworks change over time. The first ever recorded title of this painting was the title The Maid. How did we come up with that title? Actually, the title emerged from this Philippine Encyclopedia. There were two editions to this. The first edition was printed in 1935. We never saw that set of edition. But the second edition, this was what we were able to get. So a 1953 edition, and if you look at volume 5, there was a special feature on Juan Luna. Typical of this set of encyclopedia, after the discussion on the artist, they would have this set of parang black and white templates. The tendency was for some people to tear off some of these templates and they would put this in a frame, no? Frameable sila. The image was this lady and three personas or three characters on the left side. But the image that was featured on the template was, well, it was a little hazy. No, it was so bland. And you can see that maybe the printing was not of very high quality. But there you see that you have here the title, The Maid by Juan Luna. And of course, we know for a fact to whom this maid, the title refers to. No, so it refers to the lady. Now, the next one is a title. Prior to this was actually a title that I shared to you when the Ateneo Art Gallery was about to be opened. Dr. Emmanuel Torres visited the house of one of his students who was actually related to the Nakpils. Actually, the house was in Quiapo. He went to Bahay Nakpil Bautista in Quiapo and saw a beautiful painting, and he tried to request if they could feature the painting in the inaugural exhibit of the Ateneo Art Gallery in the 60s. The family requested for some insurance coverage, but unfortunately, I think the school wasn't able to reach out to the painting. But what was good about that experience, Professor Emmanuel Torres was able to do initial research and found out that there was this title, Coquette. No? Siguro lahat kayo nagtatanong, ano po yung coquette? It's C-O-Q-U-E-T-T-E. You know, sometimes many of us encounter this word in many of the love books, the romance books, the Barbara Cartland books that you tried to read through, no, when you were growing up. Yung mga hopeless romantics dyan, alam yung word na coquette. Now, coquette means flirt. Ang malandi, ang kikay, or you can even extend it, ang pokok, ang papaw, haliparot, at talipandas, ang pakakak. Diba? So, it has a wide range. So, you know for a fact that, mukhang ang projection nila dito sa babaeng to was, she was a flirt, and she was trying to entice the attention of the three persons at the corner. Now, the third title is a title that appeared in this book. This is the book that was authored by Professor Santiago Albano Pilar. Um, I would like to give due acknowledgement to Jack Pilar, our dear professor and also a foremost authority on Juan Luna, who recently died because of COVID just last month. No? So this is one of his magnum opus, the Juan Luna book, The Filipino as Painter. This was published by the Lopez Memorial Museum and with an introduction by Nick Joaquin. What's so nice about this book is in one of its center spreads, you have this image. And in the image, siguro what I can say is, I think the registration of this image is worse than the one that we had in 1953. So the colors, the black and white, they're all blotted, and you could barely recognize the elements inside the painting. And we asked Jack, when he was alive, we asked him, Jack, didn't you see the painting? Didn't you get a photo of the painting? He said, actually, when he was, putting together this whole volume, he saw a photo of this painting in one of the collections of a major collector. And he asked permission if he could publish it. The collector said, well, why not? And because of the very poor quality of the photo, this is what happened to the registration inside the book. So this was just something that we could content ourselves with this black and white image. So that's the third title for you. Now, the last title is, of course, the title that we all know. So anong title po yon? This is The Parisian Life. Now, that's the title that was used by Christie's when it auctioned off the painting in 2002. Paano nila kaya nalaman? Well, they do have a battery of experts. When you have an object auctioned off, there's this battery of experts that sits behind the auction house. And they researched this painting and they rediscovered. The painting was already exhibited in the International Expo in 1904. This is the expo in St. Louis, Missouri, wherein the Philippines was represented. This is, I think, a very notorious exposition. We have very bad reviews about exposition because this was where many of our indigenous communities were brought to the United States. They were set in a tableau. They were looked up para silang naka-display sa window. No? So we had all of this documentation about this exposition. Ifugao tribes were exposed. There were also bands that played in the expo, and they even have really breathtaking collections from the Philippines that showed the variety and the diversity of our natural resources, but also of our cultural heritage resources. In this expo, around 50 paintings were exhibited. One painting won a gold medal, and I think some of you are familiar with this. The gold medal winning painting was Planting Rice, not by Amor Solo, but Planting Rice by Fabian de la Rosa. The silver medal winning painting was actually this painting, Parisian Life. Now, how do we know that it won a silver medal? When this painting was exhibited in Christie's, nobody realized that behind it, there was also an accompanying certification. And part of the painting that was auctioned off was this certification. And I think I would like to share with you the inscription on this particular certification. So, sige, basahin natin. United States of America, Exhibit of the Philippine Islands, Universal Exposition, St. Louis. Now, you see the year in Roman numeral. So, it stated here, it's 1904, commemorating the acquisition of the Louisiana Territory. The Philippine International Jury of Awards has conferred a silver medal upon Dr. Bautista Lim, Manila, for the painting. So you see the highlighted title, Parisian Life by Juan Luna. So what's the year that's stated here is 1904. Now, what's the title that was ascribed to the painting? The title, it's Parisian Life. So we know for a fact that as early as 1904, wow, meron na talaga siyang title na Parisian Life, no? So for all of us here, the moment you hear the title, you have the maid, you have coquette, you also have interior de un cafe. So here you have another title, you have it Parisian Life, and this is actually like the earliest title because it predates the 1953 um, publication, no, in the Philippine Encyclopedia. So whenever you hear any one of these, it all refers to just one painting, and this is the painting that was bought by GSIS. This is Parisian Life. Okay, I think it is standard for many of you who have your collections in your houses. For some of you who are very, very young, mga novice, mga neophyte collectors, you always look at the physical attributes of the painting. Now, for this painting, first, look at the image. It's very French. It's inside a cafe. You have the lady. You have the three men at the corner. This is an oil on canvas painting. The medium is oil. The surface is canvas. It's linen canvas. Now, lucky for us, because we were able to dissect this painting very closely. But, sir, how is it, for the canvas to be attached to the frame? Actually, when you see this painting, there's no wood, there's no board, there's no panel. No, wala yang plywood sa likod. It's just the frame. And the frame, it's like a bastidor. No? So you have to have the cloth stretched against the frame and the cloth becomes taut and tight. So para ka talagang nag-embroidery. So when the cloth becomes stretched against its frame, it becomes taut and tight. At pwede ka magtambol, no? So there is this tension on the cloth. Now, how about the size of this painting? The painting is small. If you compare it by the standards of contemporary art, this is a very small painting. It's almost like a personal painting. And here, 22 inches on the vertical side, 31 inches on the horizontal side. Okay? So it's not even 1 square meter. No, sabi like kung niloloko ito, nako buti na lang yan ang size ng painting. Kasi kung lumiit-liit pa ng konti, laki lang siya ng doormat. Now, this will really raise talagang bigger controversies because can you imagine this painting was bought for 46 million and it really scratched on the ire of many of the not just collectors but many members of the GSIS. Now, if you would like to know the painting area, now you just have to multiply 22 inches by 31 inches. Then you have a figure. And of course, you know that it's 46 million pesos worth. Now, if you would like to know the price of this painting per square inch, alam niyo per square inch, if you have a 1-by-1 picture, that's a square inch. Now, if you will calculate this painting horrendously is priced at like 56,600 pesos per square inch. Siyempre, windang na windang lahat ng tao doon, di ba? So, this contributes to the fueling of the controversy at that particular time. So, many of the people actually said, bakit hindi nilang binigay sa amin yung pera sa mga members? Now, that will be a discussion later, no, that we can work out. But for some of you, if you'd really like to look at this painting per square inch, I'm giving you a technique that this is how we calculated the painting. Again, look at the painting. So you have the lady. She is on this couch inside a cafe. Her back is right against the glass panes of the cafe. And on the corner, you have three people with their top hats on. Now, this is the back side of the painting, the one that I was trying to tell you earlier. This is the typical framing of the 19th century. So you have the frame, the line at the middle is the spine of the painting, and you also have the wooden pegs, no, makikita nyo, to tighten and to secure the frames, you have the pegs of Juan Luna. Now, you see that the canvas is really quite aged. In fact, it was very brittle. So when we bought this in 2002, the painting was painted around 1890s. So it was around 110 years. So if we will calculate the painting now, it would be around 130 years, no, by our year 2021. This painting is signed, inscribed, and dated. So if we look at the lower right-hand side of the painting, you have the signature, Luna, L-V-N-A, there's a line. Then on the further lower right-hand side, you have Paris, 1892. O ito ha, may ibibigay ko sa inyong add-on or dagdag kaalaman. Now, remember, he signed his name LVNA. But you may ask, sir, had they always been signing his name that way? No. Actually, this signature of Luna LVNA only began in 1880 when he reached Rome. But prior to that, this signature was not of the printed type. It was longhand. No? Parang longhand na dikit-dikit. L-U-N-A. No? Parang grade 1 na nagsasign. But when he reached Rome, naging LVNA. Now, why is this very important? For some of you, Luna enthusiasts or Luna collectors, this is a good indicator that if you have a one Luna and you see the signature, it's longhand, but it's after 1880, naku, patay na. Diba? Now, if you have a Luna, LVNA, pero ang year 1875 or 1878, it's prior to 1880, kabahan ka na rin. No? Because this is a milestone when Luna changed his particular signature. So, indicator kaagad yan about the authenticity and the integrity of your painting. So, this is what we're trying to tell you. Look at first the physical attributes of the painting. Look at the details even of the frame. You know, the frame of this painting is very ornate. It's very beautiful. No? So, for some of you who would like to see this painting, I will tell you later how it moved in terms of hands, in terms of collectors. So, those are your physical attributes. Provenance. This is one area that I would like to maybe abridged a little because of time constraint. But in the longer lecture, this would take up another 30 or 45 minutes because we have to trace the transfer of ownership from Juan Luna up to the time that we bought it, no, as GSIS. So these are this is the roster of owners. Now, provenance is very important in any artwork. For many of you finance executives, you are very, you are inclined, you have the certain proclivity to build your own collection. Provenance is one thing that you have to take care of. This is knowing exactly the track, the thread, the lineage of ownership of a particular artwork from the artist up to the last owner, because you will be buying an artwork. How was it? Was it a continuous documentation? Was there a gap? Was the painting exhibited somewhere? Was it borrowed by a major institution? No? For this painting was painted by Luna. He gave this painting to his barcada, Ariston Bautista. No? They were both in Paris at that particular time. When Luna was there, Ariston was also there. So Ariston had this brought back to Manila and displayed this in his house in Quiapo. Ariston Bautista was married to Petrona Nakpil, and while they were living in this huge house in Quiapo, two of Petrona's brothers also lived with them, Julio and Ramon. Now, the Nakpils were a very big clan. And when the couple died, the painting went to the descendants of Ramon Nakpil up until May of 2002. That was the time when the painting was requested by the Singapore Art Museum for exhibit, and the family acceded to the request of the Singapore Art Museum. Now, while there, the family decided that they would like to unload the painting in an auction house, but the auction at the time for Christie's was not in Singapore. So it was in Hong Kong. So the painting had to be flown from Singapore to Hong Kong, and that's where the auction happened. So it was in Hong Kong where the GSIS bought this painting. It was November of 2002. And that was a time that the controversy erupted. No? So this is just a breeze through of how the paintings move from one hand to the other. Now, just to overemphasize, when you have a painting, make sure that there's no gap. You can trace exactly the ownership. The moment there is a gap in the provenance, ito na po sasabihin ko sa inyo, kabahan na kayo. Why? You don't know if exactly if it is still the same painting that you are holding on to. No? So there has to be a very strong series of ownership. And that's why many paintings are being shown in public, particularly in exhibitions or in pavilions, because this is the only way to prove that the painting is still the original one. It is still very, very authentic. And it's good if the painting has more exhibitions because it adds up to the biographies of the painting. Okay, after the provenance, we work on the significance of the painting. This is an exercise that we usually do in heritage for you to establish the value, the meaning, the significance of an artwork. If you are taking some notes, please remember, try to divide your notes into 4 sections. I'll try to give you and walk you through 4 levels of significance. The first level is historical significance, meaning there was an important occasion or an important image, no, that this painting tries to portray. So in this image, you have images of 3 heroes who changed the course of Philippine history, particularly because this image was timely with regards to the year. Remember, the year is 1892. Tandaan nyo. And you have these images of, who are these 3 personas? Well, you have Rizal, you also have Juan Luna, and you have Ariston Bautista. Well and good. Pero, syempre, dahil nga sinabi na nga sa amin, but if you look at this painting, those are your 3 heroes. Now, you look at the left-hand side. This is the image that you will see on the left-hand side. The one whose back is turned, that's Dr. Rosa Rizal. The one who's wearing a gray suit with his top hat, that is Juan Luna. And the chinky-eyed Chinese-looking man is Dr. Ariston Bautista Lim. Okay, question. Sir, how do you know that that's Rizal? Patay na, di ba? So usually we revert to 3 approaches in establishing the veracity of a heritage. First, physical investigation. The man whose back is turned, mukha bang si Rizal? Medyo. Pwede. Next, ano ang tenga ni Rizal? From what we've read, particularly from the writings of Professor Ambet Ocampo, nako, lagi niyang inaano to because he is he's a Rizal expert. Ang tenga ni Rizal malaki. We call it tengang kawali. No? Another thing, how is the proportion of Rizal's head to his body? Now, this is also one peculiarity of Rizal. Malaki po ang ulo ni Rizal compared to his body. No? Remember, when he was growing up, he's very frail, that he even had to indulge in many of the sports. So, hindi ho siya stocky built, but he was a very frail, structured person. And mukha bang si Rizal? Pwede. How about his height? For some of you, What's the height that you know of Rizal? You know, every time I ask this, I hear horrendous heights, no? So merong 4'11", may 4'10", may 4'7", may 5 feet, may 5'2", may 5'6", may 5'8". No, wala namang umaabot ng 6. That I think I would still refer to the reference that was given to us by Professor Ambet Ocampo in his book, Rizal Without Its Overcoat. He mentioned there that the height of Rizal is, tjan-tjananan, ayan na, it's 5 feet 2 inches. No? Now, many of you kasi, when you look at the bed of Rizal in the Calamba Shrine, nakikita nyo, ang liit-liit pala ni Rizal. Paano siya nagkasya dito? Ganon-ganon. So, let's just stick on to that height of 5 feet 2 inches. Next, you have the archival investigation. Is there any document that tells us that this is Rizal? Wala rin. Di ba? So, out na yon. But oral investigation, if you will ask somebody if this is Rizal, whom will you ask? Naku, isa rin tong question na lagi kong tinatanong. Kung ano-anong sagot ang mga binibigay sa akin. Ang una daw nilang tatanungin si Juan Luna. Paano mo tatanungin si Juan Luna? Ipatay ni si Juan Luna. No? Ang iba naman tatanungin daw nila si Ariston Bautista. Well, I think this will lead you to the fact that Ariston Bautista lived a full life. He stayed in this house in Quiapo, and he was able to converse and to have dialogue with many of his apos. And that was when he would tell the story that in this painting, remember, the painting stayed in the Nakpil house for a very long time. So when the grandchildren were growing up, all of them, of course, heard stories from their lolo, and the lolo would refer to this man as Jose Rizal. Okay, now Rizal, of course, is our famous national hero. Okay, baka sinagot nyo, national artist or national bookstore. He is our national hero, and he wrote these two monumental books that changed the course of Philippine history. We have No Limitangere and El Filibusterismo. Well, I just hope that up to now in high school, we still have this. This was a required reading in third year when I was in my high school. This was required of us really to study this chapter by chapter. No Limitangere, and we also have El Filibusterismo. When you reach college, you have to take up, of course, that subject, no, Rizal. And we even have the same books, the life, works, and teachings of Rizal. When you go to the provinces, eto na, you see how ubiquitous Rizal is as a hero. Why? When he was declared as a national hero during the American Commonwealth period, it was required by the Americans that in all towns, tandaan niyo po lahat po ng town sa Philippines that was designed by the Americans, all towns must have a Rizal monument. So lahat po ng ating mga munisipyo nagkaroon ng Rizal. So that's why look at this beautiful monument of Rizal in Lucban. This is one of my favorites. No? Kasi naman yung ibang Rizal na monumento natin, hindi natin malaman kung sino yon. Pero ito, really the dignity, the scholarship, the pride that you could have out of your national hero, it's very well done. And we have our beautiful Luneta Park. Sinabi kong beautiful kasi wala pa hong Torre de Manila sa likod, yung photo bomber. Please try to enjoy this fantastic, sacred, and very pristine vista of your monument. Yes, it's very simple. Yes, it's very expansive. Ito po yung perfect example of the concept of the Filipino aliwalas. Maaliwalas ang ating monumento. I think if you look at this monument now and you have this humongous monster at the back, hindi na ho siya aliwalas. No? I think that is really the essence of many of the spirit. Why we really have to crusade in preserving many of our vistas. Because it provides us with that sense of Filipino concept of aliwalas, of sacredness, of sanctity, that conjures the respect due to them. So ito na po ang luneta before. Hindi na po yan ang luneta ngayon. Okay? You also have Rizal in the matchbox. Ayan na siya. So, isa na, naging toothpick na siya, naging matchbox na, naging posporo na siya. And, you know, if you have a Rizal monument in your town, it's automatic. You also have a Rizal Avenue. So ito may peso sign ka rin at meron ka rin Rizal Funeral Homes. Lahat na lang may Rizal Funeral Homes. Now, you have Juan Luna, the one in the middle. Now, Luna, other than as a painter, this is the gold medal winning painting. Ito po ang Spolarium. But few of us knew that Luna was also a diplomat. You know, when the Philippines was trying to establish its identity, you know, yung pagka-republic niya, si Aguinaldo, he had to farm out some of our heroes to serve as diplomats like Felipe Agoncillo. Luna was one of those because he was then in Europe and he had to go to the United States to do representations for the Philippines. The third, of course, is Ariston Bautista. The third person is Ariston Bautista, the owner of the painting. He was a doctor. He was a classmate of Dr. Jose Rizal in Madrid. When he returned to the Philippines, voila, he was shocked. There was a cholera epidemic, primarily because Manila was so dirty. You know, Intramuros, around it was a moat. Hindi na ho nakita yung moat na yan. If you look at the early maps of Intramuros, that whole walled city was skirted, surrounded by a body of water, which was a moat. Because of the garbage, the rubbish, it seeped through the pipelines and the water source, kumalat ang cholera. And he discovered this medicine that alleviated the cholera epidemic. So this was paregoric. It was the dark amber medicine that they used to arrest the spread of cholera. So you have three very important personalities that figured prominently in Philippine history, making this painting of very high historical significance. Another one, in this painting, you have Juan Luna. Who is this man in the gray suit? It's Luna. Sino itong nag-paint? Ang nakalagay, Luna din. So, is that common? Hindi naman common yan eh. No? Unless it's really a self-portrait. Now, this is one thing that we surmised. No, most likely, this is a painting very close to Luna's heart that he made sure that he is part of the story of this painting. He made sure that he is part of this scenario, the episode. He is also an actor in the unfolding of this story. At hindi lang po siya ha, tandaan nyo. He even included, dinamay ang kanyang mga kabarkada. Kasama po si Rizal, kasama rin si Ariston Bautista. So all of them figured prominently in this episode of the narrative of this painting. So this also tells us, mukhang may kwento itong painting na ito. Okay? So that's historical significance. Aesthetic significance, this is a painting done by a Philippine master painter. And let's see, why is it master painter? If you look at the life story of Luna, he was born in Badoc, Ilocos Norte, in October 23. For some documents, his birthday is stated as October 24, 1857. So this is the Luna Shrine in Badoc, Ilocos Norte. I think they changed the name of the shrine recently to Antonio and Juan Luna Shrine, Badoc, Ilocos Norte. This is a reconstruction. This is not the original House of Luna. No, when the First Lady in the 70s, Mrs. Imelda Marcos, saw this in the 70s, she only chanced upon a wall of the original house. But they really would like to interpret the life works of Luna, so they came up with this interpretation, and this is now a museum under the National Historical Commission of the Philippines. Now, when Luna was studying in the Escuela de Bellas Artes y Dibujo in Intramuros, he had a favorite teacher. But the teacher had to move to Rome. And the teacher offered Luna to join in his return to Rome so that he could mentor him much better. While in Rome, he submitted this beautiful painting we call The Death of Cleopatra. This was submitted in 1880. The size of this painting is around one a meter to around 1.5 meter. So it's already big, no, by the standards before. But remember, this was a competition, Exposition de Bellas Artes in Madrid. For a beginner, this painting won a bronze medal. So you see here the composition. You have Cleopatra on her deathbed. You have a black slave and a white slave. The black slave is about to fall down, and the white slave is sprawled on the floor. No, so this painting was featured in the Singapore Art Museum in its recent exhibit. No, and we were hoping and expecting that it could have swinged here in Manila, but unfortunately, it didn't make it. No, for everybody to marvel at the beauty of this painting. 4 years later, Juan Luna joined again, but this time he submitted this breathtaking, humongous, and very powerful spolarium. The size of this painting is around 5.5 meters to around 7 meters. For some of you, you've seen and visited this in the Masters Hall of the National Museum, in the National Art Gallery. Powerful talaga siya. No? Now, when you see this painting, remember, it is about Spolarium. This is the dungeon of the Roman Colosseum where they deposit the dead bodies and carcasses of beasts. You know, when you see this painting, it's very dark. And when they decided on this painting, there were feelings that it's just too much. It's like an assault painting. But it was so powerful. If you look at the images, you have here Luna in this Rome studio, and you even have the painting in the salon. And they conferred a gold medal to this painting. But there were actually 3 gold medalists. It's just that the gold medalists were ranked first, second, and third. Juan Luna won the first gold medal. No? And not only that, in this exposition, in this competition, there was also another Filipino. It was Felix Resurrección Hidalgo. He submitted this beautiful painting also. This is Vírgenes Cristianas Expuestas al Populacho, Christian virgins exposed to the populace. This won a silver medal. I think it was like the 9th silver medal. You know, this was a big, big occasion for the Philippines because this was when Rizal gave a brindis, a toast. And he said, Juan Luna put the Philippines, the Philippine archipelago, the genius of the Philippines in world map. They considered Luna as the first Filipino international achiever. And this was what Rizal said. Genius knows no country. It is the patrimony of all. Ang ganda. So I'd like to rephrase this. Genius knows no country. It is the heritage of all. A genius is regardless of race, creed, color, orientation. Each and every one of you, anyone who's watching now online, anyone in the front line, all of you are geniuses. We have a common genius that define our country. And this is something that we have to harness now. No? So, and this is according to Rizal, to Luna. This is a heritage that they are giving to all of us. This is a God-given genius. So, this is such a beautiful line. Kalimutan nyo na ho lahat ng lecture ko. Memorize nyo lang ito. Okay? So, next is, 4 years later, ito na naman, lumaban na naman si Luna. But of course, the organizers said, Luna, nanalo ka na 4 years ago. He still submitted really a very moving and a very historical painting, very close to the Spanish heart. So the painting was entitled La Batalla de Lepanto. It is almost as big as the Spolarium. Now this, even though it was not part of the competition, this was still given a gold medal. No? Now, all of these paintings are in Spain, and only the Spolarium returned to the Philippines in 1957 in celebration of Juan Luna's 100th anniversary. When you go to Malacanang, you may notice this dark painting, and we call it the Balad Compact. And in this painting, you have here Miguel Lopez de Legazpi, and you have here Raha Sicatuna. So the personas, no, the models that Juan Luna used were actually his barkada. So the model for Miguel Lopez Legazpi was his brother-in-law, Trinidad Pardo de Tavera, and the model for Raja Catuna was actually Dr. Jose Rizal. So there are actually some photos in the Rizal Library of Ateneo wherein they were all donned in this attire, in this costume, no, so that they could play the role in the painting of Juan Luna. Now, another aesthetic significance is the historically transitional painting of Luna. Now, this painting, Parisian Life, compared to the monumental paintings that you witnessed earlier, you know, Parisian Life is very small. Parang, ano ba ang usong painting noon? Anong style? Now, you will see here, remember ha, this was the 1890s. These were the fad, the fashionable, the uso. Luncheon at Voting Party by Renoir, 1881. Yan na. Water Lilies by Monet. Wow, breathtaking talaga ito. Now, you see this in the museums in France. So, all these paintings are actually Impressionist paintings. These are paintings about everyday life. These are paintings that you take a snapshot, no, of what people are doing in Paris at that time, and definitely Parisian life is of that genre. So these are things that we'd like to share with you, that these are the significances, no, about this Parisian life painting. We move on to the last part of our lecture, and this may take some time. We may have to go overboard maybe for 10 to 15 minutes to share with you, no, the story and the narratives of this painting. I'll give you three interpretations. I'm not trying to impose one highly particular interpretation. All of these interpretations were given and shared to us by experts, no, from the art, from the history, from the heritage sectors of the Philippines. This is the first interpretation. We call it the literal and popular interpretation. So parang what you see is what you get. In fact, this interpretation was the one that was peddled around, that it really fueled the bigger controversy. Kasi, I'll give you the story, just listen to my voice. Para lang tayo nasa radio program na meron akong radio, na ako ang radio talent nyo. Okay. There were three Filipino patriots. They just entered the cafe. They've just sat down. They haven't taken off their top hats and overcoat. And they were about to discuss something very important when their attention was caught by this beautiful lady. The lady was sitting in the middle of the cafe. She was wearing a small hat full of flowers. She was wearing a beautiful pale pink gown with a very small waistline and sexy. It's almost 12 inches. One of the heroes said, "Oi, look at that beautiful lady in the middle of the cafe." And then one of them said, "Okay, let's bet who will be able to bring home that lady." And syempre, kung nandiyan yung inyong hero, dapat lagi siyang bida. And then sabi nga kay Rizal, sabi ni Rizal, "Oy, didn't you know na nakasama ko na yan the other day?" So, why is it that this looks like a pick-up interpretation? What is in the persona of your three heroes that would condition this painting as some sort of, it's like a pick-up, no? Nandun sila at naglolokohan sila, sino makaka-take home ng babaeng to? Well, look at the life stories of your heroes. Well, Rizal is very notorious because he had many lady acquaintances. So you had Leonor Rivera, this was his cousin, and who at the very last moment, ikakasal si Leonor Rivera kay Dr. Kissing, to the British engineer who put together the railway station from Tutuban up to Dagupan. So yun ang nakatuluyan ni Leonor Rivera, but she was still madly in love with Rizal at that time. Nelly boasted, this is the best friend of Juan Luna's wife, and she met Rizal in Paris, And in fact, there was a rivalry between Antonio Luna and Rizal for the heart of these ladies in Nelly Boasted. And we know we have Josephine Bracken. No? Siya ang napangasawa ni Rizal. They had she gave birth, but it was stillborn. So Josephine Bracken actually figured prominently on the latter part of Rizal's life. How about you have Juan Luna? Well, Juan Luna, if you notice, he has quite a number of female portraitures. So even the titles, En el Palco, Una Dama Francesa, La Chula. But these are actually beautiful paintings with the models coming from, the prostitutes of Paris at the time. You can hire them to pose in your paintings. And we also have Dr. Ariston Bautista. Now, this is a very nice painting. It's small, but you have here Tampuhan. You have the wife, Petrona Nakpil, and the man in white is Dr. Ariston Bautista. So you see here that they have this mga palikero at mga very popular images with the ladies during that time. Now, you have here the three heroes. They're trying to pick up this lady in the middle of the cafe. So that's the total message of that particular interpretation. The second one is the tragic and biographical interpretation. Now, look at the images on the screen. So you have Paris, Eiffel Tower. That's why we had a very beautiful La Vie en Rose prologue out of this lecture earlier. Thank you to Julia. You have the very famous Paris cafes, and you have here a portrait of Juan Luna's son, Luling. Now, if you look at this interpretation, this was given to us and shared to us by Professor Santiago Albano Pilar. When he saw the painting, he said, "Oh my gosh, it fits into all the scenario of 1892. These were the characters. You have Trinidad Pardo Tavera. This is the brother-in-law of Juan Luna. You have here the Barkadahan. Okay, the Barkada was Felix Hidalgo on the left. You also have Felix Pardo Tavera. No, that's the another brother-in-law. See, ito po si Juan Luna, yung nasa baba. And you have here Rizal, no? Trying to peep through the frame of the image. And look at the Barkada in the studio of Juan Luna. Please remember, the house of Luna was not his house really. It was the house of the mother-in-law, Juliana Goricho. So, nakikitira lang sila doon with his wife, Paz Pardo de Tavera. So, you can just imagine, very Filipino, lahat ng barkada laging nandun. Now, what we will do, another image is, you have here the image of the barkadas also in a big party. Bawal na to sa atin ngayon kasi social distancing tayo, di ba? But this one, look at how they were positioned. You have Rizal in the turban, you have Pastor Tavera with a parasol. At tingnan mo naman yung forma ni Rizal, katabi niya lagi sa Lenny Borsted. Now, in another photo, you have here the mother-in-law of Luna, Juliana Coricho, holding the only son, Andres Luna de San Pedro. But the cast of characters is complete. You have here Rizal, you also have Felix Hidalgo, and you have Nelly Boasted. Like ang niloloko dito kasi si Nelly Boasted, iisa yung angulo. Alam niya umanggulo sa camera. At maganda siya. No? Now, there was this baby, the only daughter of Juan Luna and Pasparo Rivera. She suddenly died. No? So, this is around 1889. And by 1892, the wife was very disturbed. She went into depression. And when you look at this photo, they all look very happy. But at that time, when this little girl died, the wife went into distraught. And Juan Luna was a little concerned, and he advised his wife, "Paz, why don't you go on vacation? Go to the suburbs of Paris." The wife did. But a few months later, 1892, she returned, and Juan Luna noticed something different with the wife. The wife didn't like to wear the black morning gown. The wife was always wearing colorful makeup. Particularly, she was wearing the eyebrow pencil. 1892 was also the time when the eyebrow pencil was started to use. And in the afternoon, Juan Luna noticed that the wife would go out and move into gay French cafes. One time, while Juan Luna was doing a session with one of his clients, the wife left, took their carriage, and Juan Luna followed her. Initially, it was okay because the territory was in the same arrondissement, in the same street. But eventually, she left and moved to another district and took another carriage. Well, that's the time na medyo na-alarm na si Juan Luna. Until he followed her to this street. So this was documented. The wife entered into this building in 25 Rue du Mont-Tabor. Now, in this building, you have the staircase in the middle, typical French buildings. Juan Luna followed. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to trace to which door, no, to which floor. He was fuming with anger, and when he left, there was another personality that he was familiar with. In fact, somebody told him that the wife was always meeting a particular doctor, no? Dr. Duzac. He was a doctor in the French Legion that was assigned in Cuba at the time. So when the carriage, the one handling the carriage told Monsieur Duzac, nako, nag-fume na ang Juan Luna, that there was already this build-up of tension and anxiety between the husband and the wife. No? Now, remember, there was also the occasion that at the height of his anger, Juan Luna pulled out his gun. The wife and the mother-in-law panicked and moved up to the second floor of their house. Now, this was the location of their house in Paris. It's Villa Dupont in 48 Rue Pergolese. This is very near, actually, the Louvre. Now here, at the second floor, the wife, the mother-in-law, started to scream at the Tower of the Voices. They were asking for help because Juan Luna was already at rage. He was raging. Now the brother-in-law, yung Felix, the younger brother-in-law, he rushed towards the house. Juan Luna saw him, raised his gun at 11 meters away, aimed at him, shot him on the right shoulder. Juan Luna left and moved up to the second floor. He heard the screams and he fumed. He talagang nagpintig siya and banged the door open. Right in front was the mother-in-law, and he held the barrel of the gun close to the mother-in-law, shot her at close range. He ran after the wife, and he was able to step on the gown of the wife. He aimed the barrel of the gun behind the ear of the wife, shot her at close range, and everything blacked out. Well, the police came. They took and arrested Juan Luna. The artist, the painter, was incarcerated only for 2 months, and eventually he was released. So they consider this crime as a crime of passion. Okay? So very tragic. And if you look at images, this is an image in the Filipino Heritage Book. This was published during the Marcos time. You see here the lady in red, that's the mother-in-law, and the lady in blue, that's his wife. No? And in the book Rage by Alfredo Roses, this is available in the National Bookstore. You see that he also tried to enter through the bathroom, but I'm trying to provide you with this reference because they would narrate snippets of what happened to this tragedy, of the Pardo de Taveras under Luna. And here the tragic account would be narrated very, very vividly. So all of these are Pardo de Taveras. That's why up to now, they still have this heavy heart with regards to what Luna did, to the family. This is the family of the Pardo de Tavera. So you have here the mother-in-law, Juliana Coricho, and the 3 siblings, Trinidad, Felix, and Paz Pardo de Tavera. So you see here, nakalagay kay Paz Pardo, married to Filipino painter Juan Luna. Now, from Trinidad Paritavera down to the present Paritaveras and to the relatives, they have and heard this narrative. That's why it is still, of course, very difficult for the family to face up to this. Now, look at this. Underpass and Juan Luna, they had two children, no? Andres Luna de San Pedro and the one who died. And under Andres Luna de San Pedro, also, I think, two children, no? So this is the family tree of the past Paritaveras. So that is one interpretation of this painting, the tragic and biographical interpretation. We move on to the last interpretation. I hope you can bear with me so that you can focus exactly. This interpretation was given to us by Professor Roberto Feleo of the UP College of Fine Arts. The UP College of Fine Arts has a very strong visualization program. And in fact, I think they also studied the imageries related to this painting. This is the symbolic and historical interpretation. According to them, when you look at this painting, there are three things that you may want to look into. What's the first image that you normally would look at in this painting? Of course, it's the lady. Why is that? Because all components would gravitate towards the lady. So the attention of the three heroes move towards the lady. Look at this orientation of the table. It points towards the lady. Even the chair is oriented towards the lady. Look at this triangulation of the newspaper at the back. It points towards the lady. And if you have this tip of the Burberry coat, it also points towards the lady. This is a very cunning technique of Juan Luna. The moment he has this diagonal composition, you become part of the composition of the painting. Kasi pumapasok ka doon sa painting. And because of this, there is this direction that guides you. And here, you see that all of the elements talagang kinakapture ng babae. Okay? Next part, the tension in the subject. The moment you see the lady, for all the ladies here, is the lady comfortably seated? Obviously, hindi. Look at that posture of the lady. Tatayo ba siya o upo? Di ba para siya naiihi? Para siyang pupunta ng CR? And one of the surgeons or the doctors who saw this painting said, wow, grabe ang tension sa katawan ng babae. Immediately, they knew, just by looking at this image, there's tension. Now, look at the face of the lady. Ito po ang mukha ng malayo ang tingin, walang tinatanaw. Tulala. Look at the shoulders. It's very high. Look at the arms. It's trying to balance. Wala pa yung kabilang arm, pero it's trying to balance itself. And even the backside of the lady. You know, there's the curvature, pero alam mong very stiff. It exudes that stiffness. And the, the thighs up to the open legs. Ito very, very pronounced. You know, you open your legs. Is this a gesture that you're about to move? You're about to get up? So all of this, parang it is in suspended animation. You don't know exactly what will be the first move. So the last one is, look at the very small waistline. According to Napoleon Abueva, our national artist for sculpture, when you saw this, sabi niya, Rick, bakit mali ang figure ng babae? Well, she has a very small waistline. Obviously, at the time, they used the corset, no? Para mas sexy sila. But this one, this is the very small waistline na talagang takaw attention. Now, using all of this, according to UP College of Fine Arts, look at this figure of the lady. Opposite is the figure of the Philippine map. The map was also sent to us by the UP College of Fine Arts. Look at the shape of the lady on the right, and the shape of the Philippine map on the left. Tignan nyo yung flow, ha? Yung flow pa lang. Mukhang pareho. Magkaibang direksyon lang, sir. But actually, this is a technique that was already used during the 19th century. And this technique is what they call the mirroring technique. So ang gagawin natin is put this Philippine map in front of a mirror. Salamin. So sige, kumuha kayo ng salamin dun sa CR ninyo. Kumuha kayo ng salamin. O, ilagay nyo ang salamin sa harap ng Philippine map. Exactly the image on the mirror, you overlay on the lady. Now, we will do that and we'll facilitate it for you. Ayan siya. This is the mirror image. This is the actual image of the Philippine map. This is the mirror image. The image of the Philippine map is 2002. The painting of Luna is 1892. There is a 110-year difference between the Philippine map and the lady. Now, let's look at this one by one. When you look at this image of the lady with the Philippine map, Babuyan Islands, the one of the north, papatak sila actually doon sa mata ng babae. They would all look like teardrops of the lady. When you look at this portion of the upper torso of the lady, so from the shoulders down to the waistline, it will form the provinces of Cagayan, Isabela, up to Aurora. Ang sexy niya. Look at the stiff side of the lady. So this is actually the peninsula of Bataan, up to Zambales, up to the one in Bolinao in Pangasinan. Eksakto siya doon sa likod ng babae, the stiff side of the lady. How do we overlay this? You know the guide, according to UP College of Fine Arts, put the smallest distance of Luzon from east to west, from Infanta, Quezon to San Antonio, Zambales. Ilagay mo yung smallest distance into the small waistline of the lady, and all parts of the Philippines will fall into the right places. Tingnan nyo ha, all the provinces fall inside the pink gown of the lady. Very interesting din eh. Kasi kung saan lumiko si Samar, look at the curvature of northern Samar. Doon din lumiko ang pink gown ng babae. Di ba? Now, look at how the Zamboanga Peninsula split from the mainland Mindanao from Cotabato. Nag-open up din doon ang legs ng babae. So, this is very, very uncanny. Is it accidental? We don't know. So, what we will do ay isang island dyan, hindi nag-fit sa figure ng babae. And what island is this? This is Palawan. Now, what UP did, they said, Eric, why don't you just overlay the island of Palawan on this arm of the lady? So, this is the arm of the lady. Nakikita nyo? Okay. The arm of the lady, you see three major curves. So, the first curve on top, the middle curve, and there's a smaller curve. Now, if you put Palawan, ay, may three curves din siya. May curve sa taas, curve sa middle, may curve sa lower part. In fact, if you look at this portion, there's a fold on the sleeves of the lady. Parang letter J. Pero kung ilalagay natin si Palawan, oo, nagpo-form din ng curve ang islands ng Palawan. From Coron, Colyon, Linakapan, up to Dumaran. Nagle-letter J din siya. Is there something wrong with this? Or is this purely accidental? Is it something knowledgeable para kay Juan Luna ito? Now, all of this tells us that it looks like the lady is the Philippines. It's the motherland. And when you have this as your key, the lady is the Philippines, is the motherland. The three heroes are there. You will be able to put together the narrative of the whole painting. If your lady is the Philippines, the motherland, then you see here, what is this newspaper at the back? When you look at it closely, may title siya. It's L'Echo de Paris, The Echo of Paris, The Cry of Bastille. Naku, alam na alam niyo yung musical na to. What is this famous musical? It's about the French Revolution. It's Les Miserables. Did it happen in 1892? No, it happened 100 years before 1892. Kaya nga may newspaper na sila eh. L'Echo de Paris, The Cry of Bastille, Les Miserables. And it's placed at the back of the head of the lady. It is the tension. It is the inspiration of bakit ganyan ang babae. Next is, look at this top hat and overcoat. You know that the lady was having a drink with somebody else. So, alam mo na mukhang ito yung kasama ng babae. If the lady is the Philippines, sino ang top hat and overcoat? Who was the boyfriend? Who was the colonizer of the Philippines in 1892? This must be Spain. So, look at the relationship of the Philippines to Spain. Ito ang nakakatuwa. It is symbolized by these beer mugs. The beer mug of the lady is half full. Pero yung beer mug ng Spain, parang konti pa lang. So, parang, ano ito? Nilalasing ba ng Spain ang babae? Because from our point of view, mukhang mas malakas pinapainom ang babae. No? So, here you see that with these imageries, you see that the three heroes were trying to look at the situation of the motherland, the Philippines, in 1892. 1892 is a critical year. That was the year when the Katipunan was formed. That was the year when La Liga Filipina was also formed. And 1892 was the year when Jose Rizal was banished to Dapitan. Sabihin, na-exile na siya to Dapitan. So the tension on this lady is actually evident of the situation of the Philippines at a particular time, 1892. The revolution was about to take off. Ayan na siya. So here, please note, when you have this lady, gabi ang tension dito sa katawan ng babae. You thought of the world, it was just an ordinary painting, but actually the longer you look at it, you see so many different elements that something was well manipulated. Look at the neck of the lady. It's black. It's a principle in photography and even in painting. You do not put the head figure against a black break. May break yan sa taas ng babae. Kaya tignan mo, nakadikit ang ulo ng babae. You connect it to the black neck. The lady is in a noose. Para siyang binibitay. So the lady is actually trying to wiggle herself out. So you can see here that Juan Luna purposely and deliberately defied many of the canons of painting just to subliminally impress a message to many of his viewers. No? Now, this is the painting that was controversial, that was bought by GSIS for 46 million pesos. And, you know, this was auctioned off in Christie's in 2002. Juan Luna, on his way back to the Philippines, died also in this area where Christie's auctioned off his painting. It was in Hong Kong in 2002 when the painting was auctioned off. It was also in Hong Kong where Juan Luna died in 1899. Quite strangely also, the place where the painting was auctioned off was near the place where Juan Luna died. Juan Luna stayed in Hong Kong for 20 years. Around 1920s, his remains were fetched by his son, Andres Luna San Pedro, brought back to the Philippines. The son requested the American government kung pwede ilibing ang kanyang tatay, finally, with a hero's burial. Of course, the Americans didn't like it. They were afraid that that move would incite further feelings for revolution. So the son kept the remains of his father in his Crystal Palace in Escolta. Up until the war, the father wasn't allowed to be buried in his own homeland. Imagine ninyo ha, the first Filipino international achiever, the one who expressed that genius knows no country, it is the heritage of all. Hindi siya inaalaw na malibing sa sarili niyang bayan. The son died during World War II. The father was finally interred, no, without any relatives in San Agustin. For some of you, you go to San Agustin Church, go to the columbarium, you will notice when you enter the door, you turn left, count 1, 2, 3, 4, crypt number 73, there is a very lonely lapida. It's a tombstone, nakalagay Juan Luna Inovicio. This tombstone, because he has no family anymore, he is accorded as a hero. He is only celebrated during his birthday of October 24. There's a small clump of flowers and just from the government. It's such a lonely crypt. It's a very lonely crypt for a hero who has given a lot to this country. Siguro, I'd like to bring you back to this image of the Parisian life, that as we close, I think I'd like to share with you some thoughts. First, when we saw this painting, yes, it was controversial, very controversial 20 years ago. Now you could barely hear stories about this painting. But what does this painting tell and remind us? First, when you see a painting, don't just look at the image that you see. It will have an impact to you, but ask what's the story behind the image. Because every time you'll know the story, that's the one that will impact to you, and that's the one that will carry you through in terms of meaning, in terms of significance. One thing that was always impressed and that was given to us by the UP College of Fine Arts was the fact that they reminded us that we are part of this episode of Juan Luna's painting. We are at the foreground. The lady is in the middle ground. The three heroes are in the background. One thing that I have to ask you is, if the lady is the Philippine map, definitely the Philippine map is in the mirror image. But from our side, the Philippine map is inverted. But from the side of the heroes, the Philippine map is in the correct side. Yan po yung gusto namin i-share sa inyo. For Juan Luna, he would always like the Filipinos to be part of this unfolding, of putting meaning into the painting. What was he trying to tell us? Did he tell us exactly that this is the Philippine map? No. He wouldn't tell that to us because he had always believed that whenever you have a Filipino audience, you have to respect the genius of your audiences. You thought all the while the genius here is Luna. Actually, it's the other way around. How Luna painted this painting gave due credence and acknowledged the genius of the Filipinos to unravel the secret of this painting. Yun siguro yung gusto na namin i-share sa inyo. Artists always believe that their audiences are intelligent. So with that, thank you very much. Magandang hapon po sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much for that very enlightening and fascinating discussion and revelations, Dr. Cerudo. Indeed, every painting tells a story. In this case, behind Parisian life is not just a story. It's actually history. It's Philippine history and geography. And we are always part of that painting. Makes you appreciate the artists and their masterpieces even more. But before we move on to the much awaited Q&A, let us first take a very quick group photo. Kindly turn on your video. Alex? Alex, better to count so we know when to smile.
Alex
We are 101. So how many panels? Are we done?
Yes, hold it for a while.
Okay, we'll do this panel first. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, one more. Hold on. One. Okay, it's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. I will now turn you over to our favorite, ever charming moderator, Miss Marilu Malu Cristobal, for our Q&A portion with Dr. Zerudo.
Thank you, Maret. Before I start, I need to add that it's not only enlightening, it's also quite gripping. It's like watching a movie thriller or a K-drama. And that is the added dimension, Dr. Eric, that you provided to this session. But before I start with my first question, I just want to remind the attendees that there's a Q&A, that's a chat box, and time permitting, will answer, or Dr. Eric will answer all your questions. So please do type them in. Dr. Eric, I want to start off by going back to the controversial purchase by GSIS of the art piece in 2002 for 46 million pesos. If you apply a 5% inflation rate compounded annually, that would be about 117 million pesos in today's pesos. And the detractors and the critics back then were obviously saying in very dramatic terms that that amount could have fed the hungry and clothed the naked. And there were also those who said that they questioned the price that was actually paid for it. But then on the other side of the coin are those who say that GSIS did not purchase an art piece, it purchased a part of the country's heritage. My question, Dr. Eric, is should there be a price tag to heritage? And how do you set that price? Especially for a developing economy with so many other priority expenditures that it needs to address and worry about.
Yes, that's true. The question is, do you put a price tag to heritage? No. It had been a very long and lingering siguro tug of war between heritage and development. No. That move of the GSIS was considered very bold. No, lakas ng loob ng GSIS at the height of the flagship project was poverty alleviation. It just moved on and just took back that painting, no, back to the Philippines. So, personally, for me, you will always have these dimensions of you have to feed the body, you have to feed the soul, you have to feed the social part of yourself. No? So you don't know exactly. Food is very obvious. It's very material. Now, for the soul, maybe your kaginhawahan, your religion, it's there. The social aspect, you have to have your peoples around you. But at the same time, I will be very, I think, biased here because my training, of course, is heritage. So we don't really put price tag.
There is no price tag.
It's very difficult to put a price tag on heritage. No, you lose it forever. It's like saying, what is the price tag for Rizal's monument? The moment you desecrate that, it's desecrated. No, so that photo bomber that I was relating to you earlier, that's it. You lose the character of the city. You do not conjure again or Disneyfy or bring back. No, because the patina is there. There's the age. No, there's the finish. So you know for a fact na, wow, iba talaga yung vintage character niyan, iba yung authenticity niyan, iba yung ano.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Is it right to say that GSIS did not buy it as an investment, and therefore, if an offer was made for a multiple of its acquisition that would give it a astronomical return on the investment, how should GSIS then react to such a scenario?
You know, that was raised also by some of, under the GSIS was under the Commission on Audit, no? So they were also trying to dissect how to treat that particular purchase of the GSIS. And
Yes.
in fact, um, the rationale there was the fact that we had our museum, GSIS, so we also had a mandate to do our own collection because we already had a museum. So it's more than just an investment, no? So it was really part of the museum collection, also to improve the base collection that we had at that point in time. But if the way we would insure it inside GSIS, we would look at the market value of this particular artwork and would also have it appreciated
But
para
the market
investment din siya.
value will never be realized.
Ah,
Because if it will never be sold, it's pointless reflecting the market value because the return or the gains will never be realized. But
but it's
anyway,
there.
it's a
For
matter for
insurance
further.
purposes, for insurance purposes, we really have to put some value into it.
Yes,
No,
yes.
just for any uncertainty or any risks,
Uh,
there has to
yeah.
have just like in any government, like you cannot put a value to the Banco Central collection. That is just mind-boggling. And this is just one painting for GSIS. The Banco Central, it's also in their books. But every year they have to submit to us
Yes,
so
yes.
much amount that it has to be insured. And that's also the way that we treat this painting.
I'm just wondering whether it should be booked as an investment from an accounting perspective. But let's shift to another topic. I want to shift away from the art piece and to the artist himself. There was mention about genius earlier. And I remember reading that Aristotle was supposed to have said that there is no great genius without a touch of madness. And Steve Jobs also said, you want genius, you get madness because they're two sides of the same coin. Is it correct to say that when Luna had the tortured mental state, and that kind of mental state was what allowed him to create his obras maestras?
Um, I think genius, it's not just like something that happens overnight. The genius, you really have to live up to layers and layers and layers of experiences, of exposure, of observations. You know, it's a confluence, of particular
It's a
contexts.
discipline.
Yes, definitely. On how you navigate and transact and negotiate all of this that comes out. So I think for Luna at that particular time, now, well, the family is really known for with a bellicose character, very belligerent. Mainitin ang ulo nila, no? Antonio Luna, Juan Luna, nandiyan na yan. So, you know already that in the second interpretation, the tragic and the graphical one, it really had basis, no? Kaya nag-rage sila talaga lahat. Now, that's just because of the family, but for the many work that he had, you can also imagine the discipline, no, as an artist, uh, the observations, the years and years and years of perfecting the lady figure. That was one observation of many artists about this Parisian lady, particularly the face. I think the face was only done by Luna in 5 strokes.
Mm.
How can you do a
Mm.
face that has all
Yes.
the expressions of
And it seems to be the
tension?
most difficult part of the
Oh,
human
sabi ko,
anatomy that
are
is
you
painted.
sure? And the conservator said, yes, sir. Ang konti ng stroke na to. But he is able to get it. You only get that because of the constant practice, the
Yes.
discipline, the mastery. It's
Plus
that.
siguro there's innate talent that you develop and nurture.
Yeah. Oo, nandyan na rin yan because the whole Luna family, they're all talented. One was a musician, the other one's a pharmacist, the other one, but they doubled into so many specializations. So
Just one more question before I go to the chat box because it's filling up with questions from our attendees. I understand that artists have their muse, the source of their inspiration and the one who ignites their passion. Did Juan Luna have a muse? Uh, who influenced him and ignited his passion? Was it the wife or somebody else?
Uh, I'm not very familiar about that. No.
Have you read anything in your research about him having that particular inspiration that allowed him to do his pieces even better than he other would have had if he was not inspired enough?
Um, One thing about Luna is that he was very um, he did he did a number of bocetos or studies.
Mhm.
No, he would do so many studies, particularly about the women figure.
Can I just before I start reading that we mentioned boceto because there was a boceto of the spoliarium which was auctioned
Yes.
so many months ago, and how much did it fetch in the auction in Salcedo? And there were also
That's quite
questions about that.
Yes, yes, yes. Bocetos come and go. No, we don't know exactly because many of these artists during their lifetime,
Mm-mm.
we weren't there. No, there were no documentations about all these bocetos.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
if you have a boceto and people claim that it's boceto, if it's really a boceto, the best approach for you really to settle the authenticity of a particular art, do go through a scientific study. Ipa-check yung chemical composition ng
Yes.
ipa-check yung linen,
Mm-mm.
ipa-check yung thread, ipa-check. You don't even have to talk about it.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
we are already
There's a
21st
scientific
century.
way of
Scientific way to establish
determine its
authenticity.
authenticity. Okay.
Exactly.
Let me ask the first question here. How much though was the starting bid when the Parisian Life was auctioned off in Hong Kong? I guess
In pesos,
the one who typed in the question wanted to know how far the price went from where it started.
it's 15 million.
15.
1.5.
1.5 back then. So
Yes.
it went up to 46. Okay.
I think the Hammer price was 42.
Plus
The last was 42
plus the
tax,
commission
commissions and everything.
So malaki inakyat. Okay, there's a question about the value of the Parisian Life if it were sold now, because the person who asked this was commenting about the good business investment of GSIs, but we did talk about it already. So that investment will not be realized, because if they were to sell it, then they'd be defeating the very purpose for which they bought the art piece in the first place. No, okay. Let me see.
In fact, it's not with GSIS anymore. The painting, you don't
On
see
loan,
Yeah.
but it's still owned by GSIS.
It's owned by GSIS.
Oh.
So it's on loan with the National Museum. For some of you, I didn't mention the whereabouts of the painting. The painting was transferred to the National Museum in 2010, October 2010. So it is housed on the second floor of the National Gallery. It has its own wall. And snippets of the story that I gave you earlier are impressed on the introductory panel explaining the painting. So you'll have more or less have an idea of how the controversy flourished at that particular time and what's the explanation on the painting.
There's a question on how the painting was preserved from that, back then, because it was made in 1892, so it sort of covered so many decades. And the other question is, how is it preserved now?
Okay, it's so well preserved. You know why? It was owned by a private family, and in the house of the private family, it was in the best. It was in the best room. It was in the master's bedroom.
Temperature control, because the heat, the humidity could affect the material, the art.
That's true. I think you really have to disabuse yourselves also of the fact. Kasi lahat tayo parang straight-jacketed. Uy, kailangan 24 hours ang aircon dito. Uy, kailangan hindi ganun kainit.
So hindi pala.
You just have to maintain a consistent temperature. No, wherever your painting is, it shouldn't be fluctuating. No, so
was there any restoration done on the art piece? Because over time, nag-accumulate yan ng soot, dirt. So it was restored.
It was restored once in the early 1900s, because there's a signature at the back of the painting. The best friend of Andres Luna de San Pedro that was Alfonso Ongpin,
Restored in the Philippines or elsewhere in the
restored in the 1900s, because
1900?
there was a portion in the painting that I was supposed to tell you that there was a discoloration on the gown of the lady. The discoloration was brought by a brush stroke, wherein the color that was used by Alfonso Ongpin was not compatible to the chemical composition of the painting of Luna. That's why there's a discoloration. They were trying to hide a small punit. There's a torn part. Alam mo naman tayo, ay, takpan mo na lang yan ng snowflake. Mawawala yan. Takpan mo na. Ako, it's a snowflake mo. Dati, di ba, when we were doing typewriters pa. But I think that was their approach, and that was discovered in 2002 that we had to bring the painting.
So there was proper disclosure naman.
Yes, because we had to dissect all by inch, no, the painting, the health of the painting. And he was very professional. He signed in Spanish that I restored this painting. No, so that's a very good practice in terms of conservation for the painting. It's very honest and it's very transparent. Then we had to intervene because it was not a very well restored approach. The restoration done by Alfonso Ongpin was not proper because nag-react nga eh. No?
Saka siguro yung technology kasi improves over time. Technology of restoration.
Definitely. So with the new technology that we had in 2002, that's the time that we really had to do the proper restoration of the painting, the cleaning, the relining, everything. If the moment you see the painting now, it's so perfect. Kasi hindi nga siya nakita ng public. It was so private. It's still in pristine condition. So it was so well preserved. It was in a very healthy state. No, when we bought it.
Okay, here's another question. If you pardon me for kind of rushing the reading of the questions because there's still quite a number I want to cover before before we close the session.
Oh, don't forget, I have a big surprise for everybody, huh?
Yes, we'll have that for the last part. And I will beg the indulgence of the attendees if we extend by a few minutes, just so we're able to cover a lot of the more interesting, questions that need to be asked and answered. Okay, there's another question here, Dr. Eric. It says, it's a lingering question. If Jose Rizal was a close friend of Juan Luna and that he called him a genius, why did he not give the painting to Jose Rizal? And why did he give the painting
Luna gave away many paintings. He gave away many paintings.
So it's only one of so many.
One of so many. Para magbabarkada lang tayo. Oy, sa'yo na lang to. Ayan. Ikaw. Ayan. I'm sure many of your friends do that as well. Diba?
Wala akong kaibigang painter pero I'll try and build friendships with painters.
That is a culture amongst our artist painters. They would swap paintings.
Yes.
They do that.
Yes.
No?
Swerte ka if you get one that is considered a masterpiece.
Ay, nako. That's why very often when our artists would put up their own museums, they always have a gallery of their friends' paintings. Like if you go to the Benka Museum, he has a wall there of all his other contemporaries and colleagues, all given to him. Now, if you go also to Ramon Orlina's museum, he also has that little corner. So you can imagine the traffic of artworks that they give out to each other.
I know that the paintings that Cory Aquino gave away to friends and ganyan, they don't sell them, but they're hanging on to them.
Very close to each other's heart. No?
There are just two comments here that I need to mention. One comment says that the Rizal Monument in Luneta has an exact replica in Madrid. That was a comment of, I think, of Chito Oreta. And then another comment of Lea Castro. She says, the story of Paspardo de Travera is so Madame Bovary-esque. So, comment lang yun. Okay.
I love this discussion, because, you see here the different lenses of how we look at our heroes, the different lenses of how we put our situations to the situation of our heroes, But, yes, it gives us an avenue to be involved in their lives. And that's also very important. I think we should also give them avenues on how they should be involved in our lives now. no? So these are some thoughts that sabi ko, sana ma-carry on natin na these are important values, no, to inspire us every day.
I'm seeing I'm seeing Maret, I think, very diplomatically telling me to wrap it up. There's just, okay, very, very quickly lang. There's a comment here by Edith that says the 42 million divided by century, she said it's worth the investment. And the other question here by Alex Fidel, when will you have a talk on Spolarium? Then we will book you for another talk, Dr. Eric. Because there are more art pieces that need to be discussed, no, from the same vista and very epical presentation that you did today and which you're gonna do for the next sessions.
But you have, I
Ito,
think
may konting shift ito, Doc Erica. Marat, give me 2 minutes. Bakit daw? Why was the Spoliarium ripped into 3 pieces when it was returned to the Philippines? This was a question of
Hindi siya kasya sa shipment ng vapor.
Ayun, oo. So, kailangan siyang putul-putulin. There will be another. Wait, the original that you wanted. Please, okay, wait. Sandali na. That's why I want to make sure I don't miss anything.
Please inform them, Malu. Remember, this is.
So, what is the value though given to the painting for insurance purposes?
When we started it out, they gave it at that amount. That was in 2002.
They insure every day. Every year.
Every year.
Right?
Yes.
So in the last insurance, magkano kaya?
I'm not with GSIS anymore.
Sayang.
I teach in the University of Santo Tomas. So I left GSIS in 2004. So I still continue the caravan and the roadshow to do these lectures of Juan Luna. Only that particular painting that I do. I don't do any other lectures for other paintings. I think there are better
Parisian
lecturers
life lang.
who can do it well, particularly for other paintings. It's only my Parisian
Before
life.
I call back Maret, I just would like you now, Dr. Eric, to show a lot of this memorabilia as a way of capping this very interesting afternoon's discussion.
Okay.
Dr. Eric?
For all of those, the remaining 87 participants that we have, this is a big treat for you. The others have left. Naku, ang laking sisi nila. So, when the painting was bought, this was the banner headline of the GSIS. This is the photocopy, 46 million, GSIS buys Luna. The
Headline pala siya, ha?
Headline siya, I think, in for the whole week, all major dailies. Nasa front page siya. For a small painting to grip the headline, that's something else. Now, what transpired, what triggered this? When we went to Christie's, this is the original catalog that GSIS used. It was still signed by their assistant director. And you see here the page of the Parisian life. Beautiful. Now, Malu, notice
At saka may ano pa siya,
there's a blue slash on the gown of the lady.
That is the
restored part done by Alfonso Ongpin. So it was lot number.
Hindi na lang, laylayan lang.
Oo nga, hindi sa mukha. So you have the original catalog. Now, when we were bidding for the painting, ewan ko ba anong ginawa ko? Natangay ko yung paddle namin. So I took this home.
So that is the one that
this is the one
that brought us the painting.
Yes, that clinched the sale of the painting to GSIS. So I'm sure Winston Garcia, the president of GSIS, has fond memories of this father.
Baka hinahanap yan ngayon.
Actually, ang ginagawa ni Winston Garcia, pinapaypay niya ito inside the
ngayon, kasama na siya sa ano.
So ito na siya.
Historical na siya ngayon.
I think the most powerful evidence that we have, remember the interpretation, the Philippines, of the lady as a Philippine map. This is the original letter of UP College of Fine Arts of how they interpreted the painting as the Philippines. Now, I would like to read to you one line to close our session this afternoon. Dear Eric, I am not an expert on Luna, but I have often consulted his works in the representations I worked, and those exercises led me to realize that no one should underestimate his visualization. Painters would always suggest never define, for it is an acknowledgement that his audiences are intelligent and geniuses. Maraming salamat po.
A nice way to cap it. Over to you, Maret.
Okay. Thank you, Malu, for moderating that very engaging Q&A portion. Malu is really a pro at this. As expected, one afternoon with Dr. Zerudo is not enough for a deep dive discussion on one of the country's most distinguished and acclaimed artists. I don't know about you, but after today's talk, I'm going to schedule a visit to the National Museum to have a long and more informed look at this enigmatic lady in Juan Luna's magnum opus. Finally, may I call on Phoenix President, Attorney Francis Lim, for the closing remarks?
Hello, thank you, Maret. Yeah, it was indeed a very interesting afternoon. Okay, thank you, Dr. Eric, for talking about the interpretations of this masterpiece, beyond value indeed. No? Called the Parisian Life, which is one of the pieces of our national hero, Juan Luna, who was a revolutionary activist, if I recall my history right. No? And you have really enlightened us about the life and genius of Juan Luna, his patriotism, and the historical context in which the painting was done. The masterpiece, if I recall it correctly, Dr. Eric measures only about 22 inches by 31 inches. Am I right? No? I saw it in the National Museum. And it is indeed beyond monetary value. No? You know, Winston was a friend. He's a friend. No? We used to sit together in the PSE board. No? And he's really one who does things, no, that he really believes in. And I think he didn't hesitate to buy that, no, knowing that I think it was in the papers, no, in the front page, that he was buying part of Philippine history, something to that effect. I recall him telling me that. I particularly like the insight that the lady in the masterpiece, no, is the Philippine map in an inverted position. More so, that while it is so from the perspective of the viewer, it is not so from the perspective of the national heroes, no, the three ones at the background. And I think that's the way we should look at the painting. We should look at it as the Philippine map fronting us so that we can do something about our country. Thank you again, Dr. Eric, for generously sharing your time, expertise, and insights with us this afternoon. Thank you too to Maret Bautista for hosting the webinar, and of course, to our very, very defatigable and I think favorite moderator, Malu Cristobal. Congratulations to the Arts and Culture Committee led by Chair Lia San Juan, and to Liaison Director Domingo for another successful webinar. I really like the webinars of the Arts and Culture Committee because it makes us culture, though. I think it's a very good exercise, especially amidst the pandemic when people have time. Thank you to all our participants in Zoom and for all who are watching by the live stream and in Facebook and YouTube. Thank you to our staff led by Michael de Guzman, and hope to see you in our future events. Maraming salamat at mabuhay ang Phoenix.
Thank you, Doc Eric.
Thank you again for
Thank you, Maret. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining us today. We hope to see you. Stay safe, everyone. Au revoir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Maret. Thank you, Malu. Thank you, Dr. Eric.
Nothing could beat